Afternoon guys, welcome back to another one of our live streams here at the Australian Reptile Park. I'm Hewan and I'm one of the mammal keepers here, and firstly thank you all for joining us. I hope everyone's safe at home, enjoying lockdown, and these videos are bringing you a bit of joy and a bit of happiness and sometimes a bit of laughs to your house, especially if you're watching those Zookeeper Dan live streams. They're great. So we'll get stuck into what I've got here today. I have two baby or Joey Tasmanian Devils. Now, aren't they cute? Look at them. Now, these two Tasmanian Devils are about 130 days old at the minute. We'll get nice and close in on them, and I'm actually going to feed one of them for you today. But before I do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the Tasmanian Devil first, and why I've got two little Joeys here that I'm taking home and I'm hand raising, and I give them milk feeds and I look after them, cuddles, and I give them playtime, everything like that, which we will touch on a little bit. So first things first, the Tasmanian Devil is the largest surviving carnivorous marsupial. So basically, they're a marsupial like a kangaroo or a koala. They do have a pouch, but they are carnivores, so they eat meat. And other animals that include dasyurids or carnivorous marsupials include things like the eastern quoll and spotted-tailed quoll and things like that. So, as the name suggests, only find them in Tasmania. We don't have them on the mainland of Australia anymore, but we used to, and they became extinct because the environment got a bit hotter and a bit drier, and they don't really cope with those kind of conditions. Now, the reason why I've got these two, a couple of reasons. One, they're actually from our conservation facility up in the Barrington Tops, which is called Aussie Ark, and you've probably heard of it. Essentially, it's a huge facility. Like, we're talking massive piece of land that we house not just Tasmanian Devils, but other native Australian animals like the quolls I mentioned earlier, Palmer wallabies, brush-tailed wallabies, rufous bedongs, a whole wide variety of animals. And it's our conservation facility, and we do a lot of work with endangered species, and Tasmanian Devils are an endangered species. That's because they're afflicted by a disease in the wild which is called the devil facial tumor disease. Now, you can see them biting me there. They're getting a bit hungry, but I'm nearly done talking about why they're threatened in the wild. So that devil facial tumor disease is only one of 3 known transmissible cancers. So it can be transmitted from one individual to the next by biting, and the Tasmanian Devil gets pretty feisty when they're adults and they're eating food and they come into contact with each other. So they bite each other, they spread the disease, and we've lost over 90% of Tasmanian Devils in the wild since 1996, which was the first official reported case of that disease. Now, I'll try and get him off my hands here. So that's what they're doing there with my hands. It's just a comfort thing. That's what they would be doing with their mother. They like to latch onto things. It hurts a little bit, but not too bad. So because we've lost so many of them in the wild, we have that conservation program, and we also have these two animals here, and these are what we call ambassador animals. And Mum up at Aussie Ark, she was having a few issues, a few difficulties, so we stepped in and we took the load off a little bit, and we've got these two beautiful baby male Tasmanian Devil Joeys here. Now, I'll try and feed one of them now for you. So I've just got to figure out who's who. They do have their own individual white markings. So I've got to feed the one who has markings on the right side of his body. Now, we'll pop this little fella away, okay? And we'll pop him in his little pet pack down here. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, now, the procedure here is pretty straightforward. You weigh them before and after you feed them. And I'm feeding them about 4, maybe 5 times a day at the minute. And I'm having to get up in the middle of the night and about 4 a.m. to feed them. So we weigh the devil just to get a base weight, okay? All right, we wrap him up nice and snug there. We pop him in on the top of the scales here, and he is 339 grams. And they were they were 180 when I got them, and I've had them for about 3 weeks. So they're putting on weight really, really quickly. So once we've weighed him, because they're really, really rambunctious, you've actually got to burrito them up. With Mum, they would push on her teat to extract the milk. So you've actually kind of got to burrito them up a little bit so that they don't get away from you, and it can be a bit tricky sometimes. So hopefully he feeds for us today. they're really, really good. Now, as I mentioned, I'm giving them milk, and we give them a specifically designed product. It's called Wombaroo, and it comes as a powder, and we mix it with hot water, and then we give it to our marsupials. So we've got the teat here. We've got him wrapped up in his little burrito, okay? We'll introduce the teat into his mouth here, and he will take the teat, and then he will start sucking. So we'll let his head out a little bit so you can see him drinking. Now you've got to keep quite a pretty firm grip on them when they're doing this, because as I mentioned, they move around a lot. You know, they're pretty feisty sometimes. So really important that you've got very, very clean hands when you're feeding any marsupial or hand raising anything really, and making sure that all your teats and bottles and utensils have been sterilised and are clean, because these animals, particularly because they're hand raised, they're very susceptible to germs and bacteria and all that sort of stuff. So got to keep everything very clean. You can hear his brother probably in the background there going, "Where's my bottle?" And he had it just before we came onto the live stream. So they are pretty, gutsy sometimes, and they'll drink and drink and drink. And these two are very, very good feeders. Probably the best two Tasmanian Devils that I've ever hand raised, and I've hand raised about 3 or 4 sets now. So I know there's 13 mil in this bottle. He's supposed to get 35 a day. So I split it up into, like I said, 4 or 5 feeds. So we let him drink, and you can probably hear his brother again carrying on there. So I let him drink, and I get to a point, usually I put a little bit more in the bottle because they spill it, but he's doing very, very good right now. So he's nearing the end. And once he's done, what I'll do is I'll take the teat out and I will clean him up. I've got some baby wipes, because it's really important, like I said, keep him clean. Sometimes he'll drool that milk out and they can get fungal infections and things if you don't clean him up properly. Now, long term, I will have these devils for maybe the next few months, at which stage what they'll actually start doing, and it's kind of gross, they'll start eating meat, but I've got to mix it with this milk powder here, or the milk, sorry. So we kind of form like a meaty, milky porridge. So it's kind of disgusting when we do it, but that's how we introduce them onto eating the meat, and then we go from minced meat to solid chunks of food, so kangaroo, beef, things like that. And once they're older, they'll go probably onto our display here at the Reptile Park. Once they're about maybe 12 to 18 months old, and then when they're about 2, these male joeys will actually go back to Aussie Ark and join our breeding program there. And by the time they get there, we're probably going to have lots more room, lots of exciting things happening in Aussie Ark. They've just opened up a 400 hectare sanctuary. If anyone's ever been to the Reptile Park, the Reptile Park's about 7 hectares, so you get a bit of a feel of how big of a space we're talking about. Now, he looks like he's probably slowed down a little bit. I've probably talked a little bit too much. You've got to pay attention to what they're doing sometimes. It's all about how you're gripping them, and we'll probably stop feeding him very, very soon. He's spilling a little bit, so we might pull the teat out now, and just give him a little bit of a clean. You can see he's got a bit of a milk mustache, but very, very cute one, that's for sure. So what we'll do is we'll just wipe him off, okay, just like that. And then what we'll do is we'll get his brother back out and we'll put them back together, because they get a bit lonely when they don't have the other one. So let's open this one up and let's get his brother back out, which is this guy here. And then we'll pop them both in the pouch, and the pouch sort of represents what they would sort of be in right now in the wild. So Mum would have them in a den, and in that den she would have the little babies sort of resting, and at night time, that's when these two sort of joeys would come active, and Mum would bring them food and feed them and everything like that. So we might open it up to some questions, Caitlin, if you've got any there, and while I try and juggle these two and put them back in the pouch.
Yeah, so you're being a bit of a surrogate mum at the moment, Hewan. How long would they stay with Mum if they were in the wild?
Yeah, so by the time they're about maybe 6 to 8 months old, they're starting to wean off the milk, and Mum's bringing them food to eat. So by the time they're maybe 10 or 12 months old, they're fully weaned. And they are fending for themselves. Now you can see they're very, very wriggly. They do have very rambunctious and sort of not annoying, but very cute, very playful personalities. You can see there. They just want to come out and play.
How much bigger will these guys get?
So right now, like I mentioned, we're at 340 grams. So being male Tasmanian Devils, they'll get from about 6 to 8 kilos, depending on if they're a particularly big individual or not. Whereas the girls, they're a little bit smaller. The girls only get to about 6 kilos. The boys are bigger.
Where did the Devils get their name from?
So a couple of reasons. One, I've mentioned their personality and the way that they behave. So that's a big part of where they got their name from. The other thing that they do, and it's actually kind of cool, they don't sweat or pant like a dog, or they don't sweat like us. So when it gets hot, what they do is they pump lots of blood into those ears. You might be able to see on this one just here. They pump lots of blood into those ears. They're very paper thin skin. And what happens is the cool air hits the blood, and then the devil recirculates that blood around the body, and it cools them down. And because they pump blood to their ears, it goes all red, and it looks like a pair of red horns on the Tassie. So that's another way that they got their name.
Can you talk a little bit about their whiskers, the little bumps on their face there?
Yeah, so you could probably get a good close-up there of their whiskers. Now, not many people sort of realise how many they have, and that's because they're getting around at night, and their eyesight's pretty good. But what they do with those whiskers is they use it to detect how to get around, and often they will use those whiskers, particularly when they're feeding. There'll be multiple Tasmanian Devils at the carcass because they're scavengers. They don't actually hunt their prey down. And there'll be multiple devils. And what those whiskers actually do is it tells them how far the next Tasmanian Devil is away from them. So when they're all at the carcass chewing on it, they know if someone gets a little bit close, they either need to defend themselves or run off a little bit.
So we could see they were biting your fingers a little bit. How hard could they bite if they were all grown up?
So when they're grown up, they've actually got the strongest bite force of any animal per kilogram. Okay, so the kind of comparison I use, if you had, which would be pretty cool, if you had a Tasmanian Devil that was the size of a lion, right, its bite would still be about 50 times worse than an actual lion. The pressure that can go through those jaws, and that's because they've got these really big heads, lots of muscles in there on their skull to close their jaws. It doesn't really hurt now. If I try and pull away too fast, they kind of bite on a little bit more, but when they're older, you definitely don't want to get bitten by a Tasmanian Devil.
How many babies can they have at a time?
So that's a very good question. The female can birth 40 joeys. Now, she can't raise 40. There's no way she could do that. And the reason she gives birth to so many is because she's only got 4 teats in her pouch. So what happens is she births all those little joeys, and they're very, very undeveloped, like the size of a grain of rice. And you can see he's just licking my hand. I've probably got a bit of milk left on my finger there, and he's probably still a little bit hungry. Like I said, sometimes they're pretty unsatisfied, but we don't want to give them too much milk. So yeah, once the female's had 40 joeys, 4 can climb into the pouch and attach to a teat, and she can raise maximum of 4 Tassie Devils at any one time.
All right, Hugh, and last question. I don't think you've told us their name yet.
That's because we don't have names for these 2 very cute Tasmanian Devils. These ones are actually part of a little competition that we've got going from Aussie Ark, and essentially you can get the chance to name them and meet them. The only thing that you've got to do is adopt an animal through Aussie Ark from now until the 20th of September, I think it is. So every time you adopt an animal, you go into the draw to name these 2 male Tasmanian Devils and meet them as well once we're out of lockdown and everything's back to normal, which hopefully isn't too far off.
That was great. Thanks so much, Ewan.
Thanks, guys.